I want to talk about the integumentary system and specifically skin color. This is particularly important because there are a wide range of skin colors that exist, and it's important, I think, to know about them. Um, all of us have some biases related to skin color, whether we think we do or not. And it's important to understand, I think, the biology behind that. And it's actually really cool biology that helps us understand how we're different and how cool that is. This image here is from an artist who has taken a diversity of people and kind of categorized their skin color by different tones. So you can see the backgrounds here match their skin color. And there's an article on this where there's a lot more that this person's done. So look at all these different colors, right? Of all these people who usually call, white, brown, but there's so much more than that. And it's all based on our biology and our skin. So let's learn about it. So if you remember, this here is the epidermis, this top layer of the skin. It is made of stratified squamous epithelial cells. And the bottom layer here, this stratum basale, is where there's mitosis going on, cell division, producing new skin. But also in this layer, there are melanocytes. So this is what I want to focus on now. You can see these melanocytes are brown in this picture. There's different pigments of melanin, which is what's in these melanocytes. So these are cells that are in the bottom of the epidermis of our skin, just above the dermis. So let's go to another image of this and talk about these. Here's another image of these melanocytes here on this bottom layer. This is a picture of thin skin here, but the same idea. And if we zoom in to this image, and this is obviously a schematic here, you can see these melanocytes that are embedded within these other cells, the rest of the epithelial cells, which we call keratinocytes. Remember, these cells make keratin, that is that waterproof protein that makes up the bulk of our skin. These melanocytes, instead of making keratin, make melanin. Melanin is a pigment, and melanin can come in different flavors. There's different tints of melanin. Some are reddish brown, some more purple brown, some more brown black, and that's part of what contributes to different skin colors. Everyone pretty much has the same number of melanocytes, but these melanocytes produce something called melanosomes. Melanosomes are vesicles that are then released by exocytosis into the neighboring keratinocytes. These melanosomes, so they're vesicles. See the circle here? It is a membrane-bound vesicle that's full of melanin. So a lot of M names to remember here. Melanocytes produce vesicles called melanosomes that are full of melanin. Melanin is the pigment that then kind of travels up, so the melanosomes burst open these pigments, burst open and allow these pigments to cover the neighboring keratinocytes. And we'll talk about why this is important. Just to point out here in this image, melanin is a primary determinant of skin color, but keratin, you've heard of from carrots maybe, it's in carrots, so it's an orange pigment, as well as hemoglobin, so blood can also give different skin colors as well. So these are some examples. So these are the melanosomes. This would be a vesicle that is released from the melanocyte. And these are some examples of types of melanin. So here, the actual type of melanin, whether it's kind of more lighter brown or darker brown, can vary between different individuals. The amount of melanin in each melanosome can also vary. So how much melanin is packed into each melanosome. And then the number of melanosomes, the number of these vesicles that each melanocyte produces can also vary between different individuals. And this is a genetic thing. So a lot of this, at least, is determined, the type and amount is determined by your genetics related to melanin production. This picture is from this website right here. I'll link to this in the YouTube comments. It's a nice overview of the same process that someone else talks through. So this is how we are different colors. And what's also really cool is that this melanin is really beneficial. So what does it do? It actually protects our skin from UV light. So when that melanin travels, so right now we're zooming into one of those neighboring keratinocytes, and that the melanin, these are all melanosomes full of melanin that are providing basically a sunscreen for these keratinocytes, a sun hat. Why do they need a sun hat? Well, we're looking at the nucleus here. What's inside the nucleus? DNA. So DNA is very susceptible to UV light, UV damage. We want to be able to protect our DNA from ultraviolet radiation. Ultraviolet radiation can break DNA. We do have repair mechanisms in our body that help to fix broken DNA, but they don't always work perfectly. And DNA mutations can lead to cancer. So skin cancer is, an issue. And this melanin produced by the melanocytes can help to protect from UV light. So here's kind of a summary comparing an individual with dark skin and an individual with light skin, and the amount of actually melanin produced is what varies in these two individuals. So again, they would both have melanocytes, but the amount of melanin produced is different. And that's all that's different about these two individuals in terms of related to skin color. The other thing is that especially someone with light skin, other pigments then would be more visible. So when you exercise, for example, blood vessels are more obvious. So you have a flush look that can happen in any skin color, but often these are it's more prevalent in people with lighter skin. And then keratin is another pigment that is that orange-yellow pigment from yellow vegetables. You also know when you get low blood pressure, you can get pale, right? So that's the lack of blood in the skin. Something else that's cool about melanin is it actually can increase in response to UV light. So when UV light strikes these cells in the skin, these melanocytes, the cells produce that pigment more, which darkens the skin. This is a tan. So a tan doesn't cause cancer, but it is an indication of UV exposure that could damage DNA. So this is kind of the pathway here. UV light stimulates these keratinocytes. This is going to stimulate ultimately the melanocytes. So there's receptors that are going to detect UV light and produce melanin in response. This increased melanin can help to prevent further DNA damage in the future. So again, tanning can be beneficial for as a sunscreen, but it itself already indicates that there was some damage. So wearing sunscreen is still important. What's kind of cool is researchers are trying to find a way to stimulate melanin production without UV light. That way you could get this response happening even before UV light exposure. And that would be beneficial, especially with people with light skin with less melanin without those sun hats there to prevent skin cancer.